Hello everyone, welcome to my update US gossip channel. Carly, whose heart had been so certain just days ago, now teetering on the edge of devastation as she watched her boyfriend, the man she thought she knew, drift impossibly closer to the enigmatic and ever-complicated Britt Westbourne, whose every move seemed designed to ignite chaos and claim what she wanted without a flicker of remorse, her entrance into the room a calculated storm, a swirl of perfume and confidence, as she leaned just a fraction too close to Brennan, whose own resolve was cracking beneath the weight of attraction and a guilty conscience, and though Brennan had tried to convince himself that Carly was the safe harbor he deserved, the world had other plans, and the way Britt's laughter bubbled up, light and teasing, echoing against the marble walls, made him feel things he hadn't dared admit, and Carly, standing just a few steps away, could see the spark, the subtle tilt of his head, the lingering of his gaze, and the way his hand brushed against Britt's in a moment that seemed accidental to everyone else but screamed volumes to her, and the betrayal sliced through Carly like a blade, the same man who had promised fidelity now dancing on the edge of temptation, while Britt, ever the schemer, leaned into the moment with perfect timing, drawing Brennan into her orbit, whispering something that made his lips curve with a forbidden smile, and Carly's chest tightened. A storm of emotions battling for dominance, anger, heartbreak, disbelief, while memories of laughter, shared secrets, and stolen kisses with Brennan flashed through her mind, each one now tainted by the shadow of Britt's deliberate charm, and just when Carly thought she could step forward and demand clarity, Britt's eyes locked with hers, not with fear or guilt, but with the kind of fearless boldness that made Carly question everything she thought she knew about love, about loyalty, about herself. And as Brennan chuckled softly at something Britt said, his hand brushing hers again, Carly felt the ground shift beneath her feet, the world tilting in a way that was dizzying, and suddenly she realized the truth. She was losing him, not because he wanted to leave, but because Britt had awakened a part of him that Carly could no longer reach, a dangerous, thrilling, irresistible part that threatened to pull them both into a whirlwind of scandal and desire, and the hospital, usually a sanctuary of healing, had become a stage for heartbreak, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows that seemed to mock her, the nurses and doctors passing by oblivious to the storm, and as she turned away, struggling to steady her breath, she caught sight of Britt's smirk, perfectly aware of the damage she was inflicting, and the audacity of it made Carly's hands shake, but somewhere deep inside, a spark of determination ignited, a fire fueled by both love and pride, as she vowed not to let this betrayal define her, even if it meant watching Brennan, the man who had been hers in every meaningful way, slip further into Britt's dangerous embrace, and Brennan, caught between the allure of Britt's intoxicating charm and the steady, unwavering love of Carly, felt the tug-of-war within his own heart, a battle between desire and loyalty, between passion and reason, and as he looked from Britt to Carly, the weight of his indecision pressing down like a vice, he knew that one choice would change the trajectory of all their lives, and Britt, sensing his hesitation, leaned closer. Still, her hand grazing his arm with the lightest touch that sent shivers up his spine, and Carly, heart pounding, clenched her fists, the metallic taste of betrayal heavy on her tongue, while memories of laughter, kisses, whispered promises, and shared secrets flashed in a cruel montage through her mind, each one now tinged with the threat of loss, and as she struggled to maintain composure, Britt's voice, smooth as velvet and laced with mischief, reached Brennan's ear, making him laugh in a way that Carly had never heard before, a laugh that was both warm and dangerous, and in that instant, Carly felt the finality of the shift, the unmistakable moment when love began to fracture and hearts started to break, and though she tried to summon courage, to step forward and stake her claim, Britt's presence was a tidal wave, relentless and consuming, drawing Brennan into her orbit, and Carly's chest constricted with a mix of anger and sorrow, the hospital corridor suddenly seeming too narrow, too suffocating, as if the walls themselves conspired to witness her unraveling, and outside, the city of Port Charles carried on, indifferent to the private agony unfolding within, but inside Carly, a tempest raged, fueled by heartbreak, jealousy, and a stubborn spark of hope, a hope that somehow, some way, Brennan would remember the bond they shared, the love that had been theirs before Britt's calculated intrusion, and yet, with every laugh, every lingering touch, every stolen glance between Brennan and Britt, the truth became unavoidable, searing through her like a lightning strike. She was losing him, and the more she resisted, the more magnetic Britt became, drawing Brennan into a world of thrill and seduction that Carly had no part of, and in that moment, Carly realized that love, that fragile, precious thing, was no longer safe, that the life she had envisioned with Brennan was slipping through her fingers like sand, and though her heart ached, her pride refused to let her collapse entirely, and as she turned sharply, her vision blurred with unshed tears, Britt's triumphant smile burned into her mind, a silent declaration of victory, and Brennan, caught in the whirlwind of emotions, didn't even notice Carly's departure, too enthralled by Britt's intoxicating presence, and Carly, walking away with a mixture of devastation and defiance, vowed silently that she would not be a footnote in Britt's story, that she would fight for herself even if it meant losing Brennan forever, and as she disappeared down the corridor, leaving a stunned Brennan and a smug Britt behind, the hospital seemed to hold its breath, as if the walls themselves recognized the seismic shift in the landscape of love and betrayal, and for a fleeting moment, the world was suspended, the three of them caught in a web of desire, heartbreak, and ambition, each knowing that nothing would ever be the same, and though Carly's heart shattered in the wake of Britt's calculated charm, a fire had been lit inside her, a promise to rise, to reclaim her strength, to face the chaos of Port Charles with the unyielding resolve of a woman who refused to be broken, and Brennan, torn and confused, would have to confront the consequences of every glance, every touch, every whispered word that had allowed Britt to slip into his heart, and Britt, radiant and victorious, would continue to weave her spell, unaware that the game she had so skillfully manipulated was far from over, because in Port Charles, love was never simple, betrayal was never final, and the sparks that flew between Brennan and Britt had set a fire that would burn through the lives of everyone involved, leaving heartbreak, passion, and drama in its wake, and Carly, though momentarily defeated, carried with her a resolve stronger than the pain, a determination that would not be ignored, because even in the most twisted, passionate, and scandalous turns of a love triangle worthy of General Hospital itself, there was always hope, always the chance for redemption, always the possibility that hearts could heal, and as the city lights of Port Charles glimmered in the distance, reflecting off the hospital windows, Carly's silhouette disappeared into the night, leaving Brennan to question his choices, Britt to bask in her temporary triumph, and the audience to gasp, hearts racing, desperate to know what would happen next, because in the world of love, loss, and scandal, nothing was ever truly over, and tomorrow would bring a new chapter, a new revelation, a new twist in the ever-turning story of Brennan, Britt, and Carly, where passion collided with loyalty, desire tangled with regret, and the fires of the heart threatened to consume them all in a blaze of soap opera glory. And yet, even as Carly's back disappeared from sight, her mind refused to let go, replaying every subtle glance, every stolen laugh between Brennan and Britt like a relentless echo, her chest tightening with every memory, the betrayal slicing through her in slow, deliberate waves, and somewhere deep in her core, a tiny voice whispered that perhaps she had underestimated Britt, underestimated the lengths she would go to claim the heart of a man who belonged, in theory, to someone else, and as she walked the darkened streets of Port Charles, the city lights reflecting in her tear-streaked eyes, she felt the weight of despair pressing down, but simultaneously, a spark of defiance kindled within, a determination to not be outwitted, outloved, or outshined, because Carly had survived every heartbreak, every plot, every betrayal that the city had thrown her way, and she would survive this too, though the thought of seeing Brennan and Britt again made her stomach churn with a mixture of longing and dread, and meanwhile, back at the Corinthos estate, Brennan was pacing, his hand running through his hair as he tried to rationalize what had just happened. The way Britt's presence had unsettled him, made him laugh in ways Carly never had, and yet, at the very core, a pang of guilt lodged in his chest, the kind of guilt that made it hard to breathe, to think, to move, because he knew, without a shred of doubt, that Carly's heart was breaking while he stood there, caught in the middle of a storm he had helped create, and Britt, sensing his hesitation, leaned closer, her lips just a whisper from his ear, her words a heady cocktail of charm, mischief, and danger, each one designed to ensnare, to tempt, to pull him further into her orbit, and as Brennan laughed softly, his hand brushing hers again in the kind of lingering touch that spoke louder than words ever could, he felt the pull of temptation, the undeniable thrill of risk, and yet, somewhere, buried beneath the adrenaline, he knew he was playing with fire, a fire that could burn everything he loved to ashes, and Carly, unaware that Brennan's inner turmoil mirrored her own, wandered into Kelly's diner, a sanctuary she often sought when life felt unbearably heavy, her eyes scanning the familiar tables, the comforting smell of coffee and fresh pastries, the soft hum of conversation, and yet, nothing felt normal, because her mind was elsewhere, trapped in the labyrinth of betrayal, desire, and heartbreak that Britt had masterfully orchestrated. And as she sat down with a trembling hand clutching her coffee cup, the steam rising in front of her face like a fog she couldn't see through,